Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Anne Marie, and today I'm going to discuss the 10 Things I Love About You, Magpie Murders by Anthony Horowitz. As always, this is a no spoilers book review, so don't worry about me revealing any plot twists or ruining any surprise endings. The whole point of this is to give you an inside peek into the book. So here we go. If you are a fan of classic British mystery, then this is the book for you. And what makes it an especially great deal is that you get 2 mysteries for the price of 1. Magpie Murders contains a mystery within a mystery. It opens in the present day with fiction editor Susan Ryland reflecting on her client Alan Conway's current manuscript titled Magpie Murders. She discusses how this manuscript changed her life, and then she warns readers about what they are about to read. And then we get the chance to read Alan Conway's manuscript just as she had done. Capturing the golden age of British whodunits, his manuscript has a country house setting, a complicated murder, a cast of eccentric characters, and a detective who arrives as an outsider. During the course of the investigation, we learn more about the people living in the village, including all their dirty little secrets, as all the pieces of the puzzle slowly fall into place. Unfortunately, Alan Conway's manuscript is incomplete. The final chapters are missing, so we as readers are left hanging. Temporarily backburnering that mystery, we come back to the present day where editor Susan Ryland begins searching for those missing chapters, and a new mystery unfolds. She investigates and concludes that there are definite parallels between what Alan Conway wrote in his manuscript and what is happening now in her quest for the missing pages. And as the book jacket reveals, the story written in the manuscript leads Susan Ryland to believe there is another story hidden in the pages, one of real-life jealousy, greed, ruthless ambition, and murder. The first thing I love about this book is Saxby-on-Avon. This is the setting for Alan Conway's Magpie Murders manuscript. It is a quaint little fictitious village in southwestern England, 8 miles from Bath. Wild meadows are speckled with flowers. The countryside has fields sloping down to the river Avon. Cricket matches are held on the village green, and homemade marmalade is sold at the village fete. The town has a milkman, newspaper boys, avid gardeners, lovely cottages, and many buildings with handsome porticos and gardens rising up in terraces. In addition to a church dating back to the 12th century, Saxby-on-Avon contains an antique shop, a bakery, a tea room, a general store, a bookshop, a fire station, a garage, a surgery, and of course 2 pubs, the Ferryman and the Queen's Arms. As a quick side note, the Queen's Arms pub is also used in season 2 of the television show MIDSOMER Murders in an episode titled Dead Man's 11, also written by Anthony Horowitz. Anyhow, the long and the tall of it is that the fictitious village of Saxby-on-Avon sounds like a lovely little place to live, aside from all the suspicious deaths that occur there. The second thing I love about Magpie Murders is Pye Hall. Pye Hall is an expansive English estate that has been in the Pye family for centuries. Complete with a lodge house, it is the grandest house in all of Saxby-on-Avon, despite its mishmash of architectural styles. Starting as a nunnery, it was converted into a private home in the 16th century. Described as having narrow and mullioned windows of the Elizabethan style, over the years Georgian and Victorian windows have been added with ivy spreading all around them. The interior contains dark paneling, walls covered with oil paintings, a suit of armor complete with sword and shield, a stone fireplace large enough to walk into, a flagstone floor partially covered by a Persian rug, and a wide staircase with stone stairs and a wine-red carpet leading up the center. Dinner is served in the grand hall with its family portraits and minstrel gallery, where guests are served food and wine on fine plates and in crystal glasses. But its main glory is its setting. A gate with 2 stone griffins marks the entrance. There are flower beds arranged like daubs of paint on an artist's palette, and enclosed by ornamental hedges, a rose garden with over 100 different varieties. Croquet is played on the lush lawn, and the grass stretches all the way down to the lake, where children like to swim in the summer. The whole estate is surrounded by mature woodland, filled with bluebells in the spring, separating it from the modern world. Unfortunately, despite all its elegance, Pye Hall is plagued by misfortune and is the epicenter of many tragic events that you will read about in Alan Conway's manuscript. The third thing I love is the book's chapter construction. There are 7 chapters in the Magpie Murders manuscript, each titled and with subchapters. The first 6 comprise the first half of the book. The 7th one is missing. The titles for each of these chapters comes from a nursery rhyme that old Geoffrey Weaver, a grave digger introduced to us in the first chapter, remembers when he notices a tree in the cemetery full of 7 magpies. 1 for sorrow, 2 for joy, 3 for a girl, 4 for a boy, 5 for silver, 6 for gold, 7 for a secret never to be told. This construction deliberately imitates Agatha Christie's use of children's verse in her writing. Each of those 7 chapters, all written in the third-person point of view, is then broken down into subchapters as we bounce from character to character and learn what is really going on in their seemingly peaceful village. Number 4 on my list is Mary's diary. Without giving too much away, Mary Blakiston is the town's busybody, who's always meddling in other people's affairs. She's the type of woman who has dirt on everyone, and she keeps a diary in which she records nothing but the darkest and most unkind observations about the people who live in Saxby-on-Avon. The village is the sort of community where everyone knows everything about everybody else, and to illustrate this, there's a line about how if you sneezed in the bath, someone would appear with a tissue. Of all the characters, Mary would probably be first in line with that tissue, because she's nosy, intrusive, and has no regards when it comes to other people's privacy. She's got all the dirt on everyone, and as Detective Inspector Raymond Chubb notes, she's been collecting it by the bucket. Which brings me to number 5 on the list, Detective Inspector Raymond Chubb. D.I. Chubb is described as plump and cheerful with an Oliver Hardy mustache. He has the look of a man who has just finished a particularly good meal. I'm going to pause for a moment to explain that in one of author Anthony Horowitz's other books, titled The Sentence is Death, he discusses how a clever private detective needs a much less clever police officer to show the distinction between the characters. This is how he does it in Chapter 3 of The Sentence is Death. Holmes has Lestrade. Poirot has Japp. Morse often tussled with Chief Superintendent Strange. It's a simple fact of life that a clever private detective needs a much less clever police officer, in much the same way as a photograph needs both light and darkness. Otherwise, there's no definition. I love that. I think it's an artful way of saying contrast is good. It makes a photograph and a book and characters come to life. Enter Detective Inspector Chubb, who provides the contrast for Atticus Pound, the outsider detective who has all the feels of Holmes and Poirot. In order to fully appreciate the genius and the thoroughness of Atticus Pound, we as readers need D.I. Chubb as a contrasting character. Which brings me to the 6th thing I love about Magpie Murders, Atticus Pound. Atticus Pound is a 65-year-old private detective, the most famous in England. He's an observant, intuitive, clever gentleman who is small in stature, walks with the assistance of a walking stick, and wears round, wire-framed glasses. In the second half of the book, we learn that Alan Conway based his character off Ben Kingsley's character in Schindler's List. As I mentioned a moment ago, he has all the feels of Sherlock Holmes and Hercule Poirot, and is the reliable detective who you know and trust will slowly uncover the truth. The 7th thing I love about this book are all the little details, some of which are red herrings, some of which are not. A bottle of poison that has gone missing from the surgery, a burglary, a commissioned painting slashed and burned, a suspicious handprint in a flower bed, a cryptic note, a scrap of paper in a fireplace, a death threat, a blood stain, a typed note, a silver belt buckle, a children's bedtime game. As Atticus Pound tells his assistant James Fraser, everything is relevant. While that may be true, some details are more significant than others. Notes are helpful when reading this book because there's a lot going on. If something jumps out at you, or if you question why the author included a particular detail, jot it down because it's probably there for a reason. Don't dismiss anything as insignificant, because as with all great and complex mysteries, the devil is in the details. Number 8 on my list is Susan Ryland. Susan Ryland is the head fiction editor at Cloverleaf Books. And, as I mentioned earlier, this book opens with her reflecting on the first time she read Alan Conway's Magpie Murders manuscript. Her character is written using the first-person point of view, whereas the manuscript is in third person. Once we finish reading the first 6 chapters of Alan Conway's manuscript, the book shifts once again to her point of view as she begins questioning why the last chapter is missing. And then, again as I mentioned earlier, the second mystery begins to unfold. I would describe Susan as a persistent, no-nonsense, nonconformist. Plus, she's brutally honest. In the chapter titled Detective Work, while she's in the middle of her own investigation, she admits the following. If you read a Sherlock Holmes story, you can be pretty sure that the detective will know exactly what's going on, even if he won't necessarily tell you. In this case, that's not true at all. In other words, she has no idea what's going on and is not keeping anything from the reader, because at this point, she's just as clueless as we are. If this isn't reason enough to adore her character, she drives a 1969 MGB Roadster, pillar box red with black trim. I mean, what's not to like about a character who drives a vintage red convertible, right? The 9th thing I love is Susan Ryland's insight into the importance of character names. This is found in the second part of the book in the chapter titled, He Used to Hide Things. What's the secret of a good name in fiction? Simplicity is often the key. James Bond didn't get to be who he was by having too many syllables. That said, the name is often the first thing you learn about a character, and I think it helps if it fits comfortably, if it feels appropriate. Rebus and Morse are both very good examples. Both are types of code, and as the role of the detective is effectively to decode the clues and the information, you're already halfway there. Sometimes authors stumble onto iconic names almost by accident. The most famous example is Sherrinford Holmes and Ormond Sacker. You have to wonder if they would have achieved the same worldwide success if Conan Doyle hadn't had second thoughts and plumped for Sherlock Holmes and Dr. John Watson. I've actually seen the manuscript where the change is made. One sweep of the pen and literary history was made. By the same token, would Pansy O'Hara have set the world on fire in quite the same way as Scarlett did, after Margaret Mitchell changed her mind when she finished Gone with the Wind? Names have a way of stamping themselves on our consciousness. Peter Pan, Luke Skywalker, Jack Reacher, Fagin, Shylock, Moriarty. Can we imagine them as anything else? I love this because I feel it provides insight into what is considered by both the author and publishing team when creating and naming characters, and it shows the importance of getting the names right. Adding to this list, Hermione Granger from Harry Potter was originally Hermione Puckle, before J.K. Rowling decided she needed a more serious name for her heroine. And here's one more for you. Diana Dare, Nell Cody, Nan Nelson, and Helen Hale were among the names considered before the editors at Grosset and Dunlap decided on Nancy Drew. And finally, the 10th thing I love about Magpie Murders are the book's metaphors. Both Alan Conway's manuscript as well as the second part of the book have them, and I chose my favorite from each to share with you. The examples I'm going to give you are technically similes since they contain the words like and as, but since all similes are metaphors, they can be considered metaphors as well. The first is Atticus Poon speaking to his assistant James Fraser on the last page of chapter 3. There is something about the village of Saxby-on-Avon that concerns me. How it is the small lies and evasions which nobody sees or detects, but which can come together and smother you, like the fumes in a house fire. The second is Susan Ryland in the chapter titled Alan Conway, talking about whodunits. I never guess the ending, and I can't wait for the moment when the detective gathers all the suspects in the room and, like a magician conjuring silk scarves out of the air, makes the whole thing make sense. I'm going to conclude this video with a metaphor of my own. If I were an interior designer, I would describe this book as a stylishly layered home with the perfect balance of vintage and modern decor and just enough eclectic bric-a-brac to make it feel cozy. If you've read Magpie Murders and would like to add to my list of things to love, please do so in the comments. Until next time, take care, be well, and happy reading.